Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's talk. We will get started shortly after we give another minute or so for people to log on. We thank you very much for joining us.
Right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the Critical Issues Confronting China Seminar Series at the Fairbanks Center. I am Winnie Yip, and I was a past acting director of the center and very glad to be back here to moderate this session. Today, one of the critical issues that we are examining is aging. Aging imposes a lot of challenges on China's economy, social structure, and its social system as well. And today we're going to look at China's pension system, to what extent the pension system is going to be able to serve the needs of this growing aging population today and in the future. What are the challenges? Is it sustainable? What can be done about it or not done about it? And today we're very delighted to have Professor Hanming Fang to be the speaker. Professor Fang is the Joseph Cohen Professor of Economics at the University of Pennsylvania, and where he's also Department Chair of Economics. And this is also the same institute where he got his PhD in economics. He has done extensive work in insurance, long-term care, and in the US and also in China. And he has a general research interest in population aging. And in fact, he just told me that he's organizing a group with a large number of institutions in Asia to examine various aspects of population aging and the challenges associated with it in Asia. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Fang. And just a note for the audience, please put your question in the Q&A box. And if you prefer not to be named, you can choose to be anonymous. And I would like to encourage you to be succinct and brief in your questions so that we can screen them efficiently. So thank you very much. And over to you, Hanming.
Thank you very much, Professor Yip, for your kind introduction. And it's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to share some of my research about population aging issues in China with the audience. I will share my slide if you don't mind. Let me see where the slides are. Okay, so can everyone see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, so as Winnie said, the topic I will talk about today is population aging, pension systems, and retirement income security in China. I know I have limited time. I have prepared more slides than I can finish. So, but please feel free to interrupt me anytime you have questions. So, population aging issue in China really result from two changes in demographics in China. One is the rising life expectancy in China, right? So life expectancy at the birth in China grew from, about 30 years to now close to 76 years from 1850 to 2020. Even if you look at the time period from 1980 to 2020, you see that Chinese are living longer, which is a great thing, okay? And the second demographic change is really the right panel of it. It's called the total fertility rate. This is basically the average number of children that a woman in China will have during her lifetime. And you can see that in China, the big reductions in total fertility happened actually from the end of 1960s, from early 1970s. This is the period when China started a family planning policy. During the decade of 1970, this policy is commonly known as later, longer, fewer policy. Having children later, having fewer children, and have longer spacing in between children. And then at the end of 1970 or early 1980s, the one-child policy came into effect. But you can see that the big declines in total fertility rate would actually happen before the one-child policy came into effect. And now, of course, China has officially ended with the one-child policy, as has been encouraging couple to have more children. As of the data of 2020 come in, year 2020 actually had the fewest number of births in China ever since 1950. So we are seeing that the Chinese are living longer, and the Chinese couples are having fewer children, and these two demographic changes result in something economists will refer to as a rising older age dependency ratio in China. Older age dependency ratio is a measure of the population aged above 65 divided by the number of population between age 15 to 64. You can think of people aged between 50 and 64 as working age population that can contribute to the social security system, while people aged 65 or above are the retiree population who may draw revenues, will receive payments from the pension system. And this ratio of population age 65 divided by the population age 15 to 64 represents what is called old age dependency ratio. The higher the ratio, it means that there are more older people for every working age individual in the economy, which is bad news for a social security system. Okay, so in China, the old age dependency ratio in China right now is still quite reasonable, is about 16%, right? Or right now, I mean, in 2020 is about 18% actually, which means that for every retiree older than 65, there are about 5 working age individuals, possibly supporting them. However, this ratio is projected to rise to more than 45% by 2050. That will translate into a scenario where for every retiree, there are only 2 working age individuals that can support the retiree. And that is ultimately one of the major sources of the population aging problems in China that will cause some issues for the pension system. Okay, with this background, this is another way of showing the changing age structure in China. In 1990, you can see that the Chinese age pyramid, right, population pyramid, is pretty stable, right? So there are a lot of young people, and a lot of young people. These vertical axis represents the age, and the width of these bars represent the fractions, right? So you can see that most of the Chinese population is young in 1990, and then by 2020, last year, you can see that this pyramid becomes a little bit narrower at the bottom, right? Fewer young people in the population, and the bulge of the population pyramid is moving up to over 45 and above. Okay, by 2050, you will see that this age pyramid looks much more precarious, right? That's another way of showing the changing dynamics in population structure in China that I showed previously using the old age dependency ratio. Okay, so with this said, I will spend a few minutes talking about China's pension system as it currently stands. Right? It's mostly background information. China has a multi-layered pension system. Right? The first layer is known as a public pension scheme. Right? This is aimed at providing basic old age Social Security to all residents, regardless of whether or not they were employed. And there are two systems. One is a mandatory system for employees. Okay, the mandatory system consisted of two components. One is known as basic old age insurance system, and the other one is called public employee pension system. I will provide more details in a second. Okay, and the way it's mandatory is because all these individuals who are employees are required to participate in this system. And then there's a second component, which are for residents. They are voluntary. There's two components of the resident pension system. One is for urban resident pension scheme. Then the other one is for new rural resident pension scheme. These are voluntary because the residents can choose to participate or not in these schemes. And both schemes receive substantial direct fiscal subsidies from the government. And in terms of participants, China has a large, actually quite a high coverage rate in terms of the pension schemes. Right, the number of participants in China by the end of 2017, but then the recent numbers are slightly higher, but not so much higher, was more than 950 million people. Okay, which is about 66% of the total population. And China's total public pension expenditure accounts for about 5% of China's GDP. Okay, so that's the first scheme, first layer, the public pension scheme. The second layer is basically related to employers. These are called employer-sponsored annuity programs. In the US, I should have said, in the US, the analog of the public pension scheme will be Social Security. Okay. The second component, the analog of the second component in the US will be 401k plans or 403b plans. Okay. And they are tied to an employer. They are provided by employers voluntarily as a supplement to the public pension scheme. The only problem is that in China, the second layer is very, very small, only about 80,000 firms, which is less than 1% of all firms in China provide employer-sponsored annuity programs. And it covers only 23.3 million employees in 2017. So 23.3 million is not a small number, except that in China, given the large population, it's a very small percentage. Okay. And the third layer of pension system is basically household savings in the form of annuity insurance policies and so on, right? So in the US, some families have annuity insurance on top of their Social Security and retirement accounts from their employers, right? And in China, this system, the third layer, is basically in its infancy. The government is trying to encourage a development of expansion of the voluntary annuity insurance market by providing tax preferences and so on. But it's really small at this moment. So just a little bit of background in terms of where things stand on the three pillars in 2020. This table is in Chinese, but I can read off the numbers, right? This is the basic first pillar, the basic old age pension system. It's the two components. This is the urban. This is the employer base. This is the urban, the public pension system. And you see that in 2020, the total number combining these two is about 100 million. Okay. Previously, it was about 90 it's about 1 billion, actually. Is that right? Yeah, 1 billion. So previously, I said at the end of 2017, the total number of participants was about 950 million. In the last 5 years, it increased somewhat, but not a lot. Okay. Then the second pillar is very small. It's only 27 million people. Okay. in 2020. And third pillar essentially is the individual annuity insurance programs. It's very they don't have a number from the Ministry of Human Resources. Okay, so how do things how does the public pension system evolve in China in the last 10 years or so, right? Up to 2015. 2015, there's a big reform that merged many systems together, right? So up to 2014, there are 4 schemes in the public pensions scheme among in the broader public pension schemes. One is old age insurance system, BOAI. This is for employees in for-profit enterprises, including for-profit public enterprises and all other private sectors, right? So the basic old age insurance system was for employees in for-profit enterprises. The public employee pension system were for civil servants and employees in non-profit government institutions such as schools, culture, and health facilities. These were 2 separate systems. The first system, BOAI, requires contribution from the employees. The public employee pension system for civil servants and so on, there's no employee contribution required up to 2015. Okay, in 2015, these 2 systems are merged. I will explain in the next slide. So these are all for employees, the first 2, right? Then there are residence pension. The resident pension systems before 2015 includes the urban one and the rural one. URP are for urban residents 60 and over without a formal agricultural job. And the new rural resident pension scheme are for rural residents 60 and over without a formal non-agricultural job. And basically, these resident schemes are for people who couldn't get into BOAI or PEP because these 2, the first 2, were employment-based. Okay. So in 2015, public employee pension scheme is merged to BOAI, right? Then BOAI became the uniform program for all employees in urban sector. And then the resident pension systems, urban and rural resident pension systems, will also merge into the uniform resident pension. Okay, so right now there are 2 pension schemes in China: one for residents called the uniform resident pension system, one for employees, right? They are called a basic old age insurance scheme, BOAI. Okay, and the total number of participants in resident pension was 512 million, and the number of participants in the BOAI for for employees were 403 million. Okay, the total sum was 950 million in 2017, and now it's slightly above 1 billion as of 2020. Okay, and this summarizes the thing. Let me just mention briefly here. BOAI, as I mentioned, merges, right, the older age pension system and the public employee pension system. And in terms of contribution, if you were in the basic old age insurance system before the merge, it's a pay-as-you-go system. What does pay-as-you-go mean? It means that the workers make contributions, and that money is not saved in an individual account. It's paid out to the current retirees as benefits. So money is collected every year from the workers in terms of payroll deductions. That money is paid out to the current retirees as benefits, right? That pay-as-you-go component is 20% of the payroll, okay? And if you were under the old age, basic old age insurance system, there's also an individual account component, which is 8% of individuals' wages. So individuals contribute about 28%, right? 20% goes to the pay-as-you-go component, 80% goes to your individual account. Except that I will later on point out that individual account is only notional, right? You will be told that if you were to contribute to the individual account, the taxes will be paid from your monthly payment, monthly stipend, and you were told that you have an individual account with certain balance, but the money is actually not there. It's only notional. You are told that you have the individual account with this amount of balance in it, but the government actually doesn't have the money put aside for you to withdraw later, right? It's only notional. That will cause some problems. I would explain later. And the public employee pension system before the merge is really good. It's much, there's no contribution required, right? It's basic. That's why before the merge in 2015, right? There were 2 layers of public employee-based pension systems. One layer for workers, for profit workers, requires contribution, but for public employee in nonprofit public employees, they don't require contribution. And moreover, as you can see, the replacement ratio is much more generous for public employee pension system. What's the replacement ratio? Replacement ratio is basically a term that is defined as the average benefit level, right? Social Security benefit level you will receive divided by your pre-retirement income, right? So 82% replacement ratio means that after one retires, your monthly pension income will be about 80 to 90% of your pre-retirement income, right? That's quite generous. Now, if you were in the public in the basic old age system, the benefits is not as generous. It's right. The total replacement ratio from both is about 60%. Okay, so I will explain a little bit more of these details later. Okay, now the resident pension was unified in 2014, but previously there was one for urban, one for resident. Again, this is voluntary, right? And the individuals only pay into their individual contribution only go to their individual account. The basic pension component of the urban of the resident pension system is all financed by government subsidies, right? This resident pension system has a lot of government subsidy going in, and that's why it can quickly cover more than 500 million people, as I mentioned, right? That resident pension system quickly grew to 512 million participants because of the very generous government subsidy to actually finance the basic pension component of these resident pension plans. Okay, individuals will be silly not to actually contribute to to participate in the resident pension system. Okay. Okay. So I already mentioned there's a basic old age insurance system is compulsory scheme or mandatory scheme with both defined contribution and defined benefit features. On the contribution side, employees are required to pay 20% of the employee's wages as a contribution, even though in there are a lot of underpay, under contribution to the system. And there is a cap of a range of wages for which the contribution will be required, right? If your income is below 60% of the local average wage, then you don't have to contribute to Social Security. If your income is above 300% of your local average wage, any amount above that 300% of the local average wage does not need, you don't have to pay the 20%, right? Only the income between 60 and 300% of your local average wage is subject to the contribution requirement. Local, the word local is actually not uniformly defined, right? It could be at the provincial level, could be the city level, or even county level, depending on the administrative region of the public pension fund. So for the US audience here, it may sound very strange. After all, in the US, right, the Social Security system in the US is a national system, right? Doesn't matter where you live, which state, whether you work in Boston or in Philadelphia, we are all subject to the same Social Security contribution rules, right? In China, one feature is that the public pension system is very fragmented. It is not at the national level yet. The government is trying to, actually this year, is trying to switch it to a national level kind of uniform public pension scheme, but as of now, it's still very local. Some provinces do the Social Security at the province level, so only one risk pool in the province level. Most provinces actually are administering the social security system at the city level or even county level. And that creates lots of regional disparities. On the benefit level side, employees with 15 years or more contribution history are entitled to the pension benefits. The placement ratio depends on the number of years of contribution and the individual's wage relative to the average local average wage. Okay. And the individual account is financed by individual's contribution, which is 8% of his or her wage. This is a notional account, as I mentioned. Individuals do not have the authority to make any allocation decisions regarding how his or her contribution will be managed, because this is really a notional account. The money is not there. It's different from 401k. Okay, you can see, oh, that you put in some of your 401k funds into SP 500 mutual fund. No, there's no money like that for you to manage. It's only notional. Okay, the BO. When can you be eligible for to receive retirement benefits? Well, the eligibility age is 50 for female blue-collar workers, 55 for female white-collar workers, and 60 for male workers. You will see, oh, that's very young. Indeed, in terms of the retirement eligibility age, China is, the retirement eligibility age is very young. Okay, so one reform idea will be to raise the retirement age, and I will talk about that later. Self-employed workers in informal sectors may participate in the basic older age insurance voluntarily. The contribution rate is 20% of local average wage, among which 8% is recorded into individual account. Okay. The public employee pension system is basically just coming from the government budget. No contribution required. It's more generous than the other schemes, and importantly, it does not require any contribution from public employees. Public employees have an average pension replacement ratio of 80 to 90% of pre-retirement age, and that's very generous. And the eligibility age is 55 for female workers because they are, white-collar female workers, and 60 for male workers. But I would say 95% of female workers in China are blue-collar workers, according to Social Security statistics, and their retirement eligibility age is 50. Okay, so even though there's 55 here for some female white-collar for some female workers who are white-collar, but majority of female workers in China are eligible to retire at age 50. Okay. Then it's merged, right? The public employee pension system was finally merged into the basic old age insurance scheme in 2015, and the rules are, the public employees will now switch to the rules of BOAI. So the rules now is being uniform, and there's some provisions during the transition. Okay, I will skip that for the interest of time. The rural resident and the urban resident pension schemes were established in 2009 and 2011, respectively, for non-employed residents, right? Because the previous two schemes that I mentioned were for employees. They are voluntary schemes funded in conjunction with government subsidies, very substantial government subsidies. Individual contributions into this scheme are put into individual accounts. So this is, basically you contribute into the system, you that your contribution goes to the individual account, and the basic pension component is purely coming from government subsidies, right? The basic pension component is coming from the government subsidies, okay? And that's basically explains why just in barely less than 10 years, the resident pension scheme attracted more than 500 million participants. And they will merge in 2014 eventually. Okay, and the pension eligibility age for the resident scheme, right, urban or rural, are 60 years for both male and females. Okay. The second pillar, enterprise annuity and occupational annuity, is very small. I will only 1% of the Chinese firms are providing such annuity benefits to their employees, and most of these firms that do provide pension plans are large state-owned enterprises or monopolistic companies such as railway, electricity, communication industry, and so on. Basically, firm that could only the firm that could afford it, right? Afford these enterprise annuity plans are providing this to their workers. But this part may grow over years. Right now, it's still quite small. Private annuity insurance is something that the government is trying to encourage development, right? But at this moment, I would say it's still quite small. Up till 2018, there was no tax preference in commercial annuity insurance. But from 2018, there's a pilot policy that provides individual income tax deferred annuity insurance products in Shanghai, Fujian, and Suzhou Industrial Park. The tax deferred annuity insurance products basically says, if you were to contribute to these to purchase these annuity private annuity plans, you don't have to pay income taxes for the premium you paid into these annuity insurance products. You pay taxes only when you withdraw the benefits. Okay, so that is called tax deferred. You deferred the tax payments for your annuity insurance premium payments, defer until when you withdraw the annuity from these plans, right? So for those of you who are not familiar with what annuity means, it works as follows, right? So annuity insurance is basically a financial product that insures the annuity policyholders against their longevity risk. Annuity means that you will receive a monthly payment for as long as you live, right? So it's not time defined, right? If you live to 120, the insurance company will pay you until 120 every month, a certain amount of annuity benefit. Social Security is a form of public annuity because we can get Social Security benefits for as long as we live, right? The private annuity is basically analogous to Social Security, except that you have to pay for the annuity insurance on your own, and it's offered by a private insurance company, okay? That differs from 401k plans, right? 401k plans here, 401k plans that we are familiar in the US, you have certain balance in your 401k plan, but if you exhaust the balance and you are still alive, you will run out of retirement income, okay? Annuity, by making the end of the payment period to be, right, the end of your life, it provides insurance against your longevity risk, okay? So this is called a private annuity insurance, and it's relatively small in China. This I already mentioned the number of participants and the total expenditures in China. You can see that the older age insurance scheme is really is really provides the bulk of expenditure, right? The total expenditure in orange is by far the largest component is basic old age insurance. The resident pension have a lot of participants, but a very small fraction of total expenditures. And one reason is that I will show you later, the resident pension scheme is not generous. It's tiny. It's right. So in terms of payout, okay, that's one big problem because there's lots of disparity in terms of the pension benefit levels. I will skip this. Oh, maybe here, or maybe before I will just look at the one thing, which is insured workers divided by urban resident, right? This is the ratio. You can see that this is basically the basic old age insurance scheme participation rate, right? Urban employment are the eligible workers who participate in the basic old age insurance. Insured workers are basically those who actually participate. You can see that this ratio is now about 70%. Not all the urban workers are participating in the old age insurance scheme. Only 70% participates. Okay, a lot of migrant workers are not participating, for example. And insured workers are growing, right? And the insured retirees are growing, and the ratio of the orange over the blue will be later on called the in-system old age dependency ratio. Okay, the the ratio of the blue over orange is the in system. In system means in the BOAI system. What's the dependency ratio, right? Instead of the population dependency ratio. Okay, so I will summarize a few facts that are maybe interest to you. China's in-system dependency ratio, right? In-system means within the older age insurance scheme. What is dependency ratio? What is the ratio of retirees in the system divided by the ratio of working participants? That's about 38%. Now, the higher this dependency ratio, the worse the system financial sustainability is. Okay, in 1990, this ratio is 18.6. So which means that in 1990, for every retiree in the system, about 5 workers are paying into the system in terms of social security, pension contributions. In 2017, it's 38%. So it's basically for every retiree, there are slightly more than 2.5 workers are paying into it. Okay, and population-wide dependency ratio, however, right? This is not it's not looking at just participants in the system. It's looking at the population-wide, right? Including those migrant workers, for example, who are not participating in the system. You see the population-wide dependency ratio is about 26% in 2017. The smaller this number, the better the financial sustainability of the system is, right? So you can see there's divergence between in-system dependency ratio and population-wide dependency ratio because of non-participation. A lot of Chinese workers who could have been part of the system are not participating. Okay, in the pension scheme. Migrant workers account for a large chunk of that non-participation. Okay. Second thing is that China has one of the highest statutory pension contribution rate at 28%. Statutory pension contribution rate is basically saying what's the rate of percentage of your wage that are required to be contributed to the pension scheme by law, right? That's the law is the statutory. The word statutory means legally prescribed contribution rate. That's actually 28%. Okay, 20% go to the 20% is paid by the employer, goes to the pay-as-you-go component of the Social Security. Employee contributes 8%. That goes to the notional individual account, and the total contribution rate is 28%. That is, as high as we can see on this table, right? In the U.S., is individual. We all know that we contribute 6.2% of our monthly income to Social Security, and our employer contributes another 6.2%, and with a total of 12.4% contribution rate. China 28%. Now, the third factor is the average replacement ratio keeps declining, right, over years. Right, in 2000, I defined replacement ratio previous. Right, it's basically the ratio of the retirement pension benefits divided by the pre-retirement wages. Okay, and in 2000, this replacement ratio is about 63%. Now it's about 46% in 2017. And the blue bars are the average pension income over time. So average pension income is rising, but the replacement ratio is declining. Okay, so average annual pension income in China in 2017 is about 35,000 RMB, which is about 46% of the participant retirees' pre-retirement income. Okay. Now, the fact number 4 is about age, retirement age. And this I already mentioned, it's very young, right? Retirement age is 60 for men, for women is 50 if they work in blue-collar jobs, and 55 if they work in white-collar jobs, and about 95, right, of the women are required to retire at age 50 because their jobs are defined as blue-collar jobs. And these are incredibly young ages to retire, and these retirement ages were established at the beginning of 1950s when the life expectancy at birth in China was about 43 years. And now we know the life expectancy at birth in China is more than 76 years. Nonetheless, the retirement age has not changed. And you may say, well, that makes it relatively easy for government to raise the retirement age in order to resolve some of the financial issues that the system will be facing. And I will later on explain what are the challenges that raising the retirement age policy may face. And indeed, the government has been talking about raising the retirement age from 2010. Right now, 10 years later, we are still China is still thinking about piloting raising the retirement age. And eventually, I think it will happen. But it's just there is a reason. I think we have to understand that raising retirement age is not easy for multiple reasons. I will mention one of that later. Okay. Fact number 4 is that despite the high statutory contribution rate, the basic old age insurance scheme would have run into fiscal deficit in 14 provinces, right, in China, if there were no government subsidies. Okay, so this is already quite surprising. I already earlier mentioned the total pension payout, pension expenses relative to GDP was only 5%. Okay, in 2017, and the statutory contribution rate is 28%. So how come that the government is the Social Security is collecting 28% of the payroll income, and the government is spending about 5% of GDP on retirement expenses? How come the government may 14 provinces in China would have run into deficit in their BOAI system? Well, because in China the systems are very fragmented. Some provinces, have a lot of young workers relative to their retirees, and some provinces have very few young workers for their retirees. And let me see if I can show that table. I will come to that table in a second. Let me not skip the orders. Okay, that's one of the big problems that China faces. There's large regional disparities in the pension scheme, in pension systems. I'm gonna skip this. Now, notional individual account. You may be wondering, well, individuals are told that they are contributing 80% of the income to the individual account, but the money is not there for them to manage. How is the return to this notional individual account calculated? Well, you will be surprised to know that the government basically provides 8.31% interest rate to all individual contributions to their individual account, even though the money was not invested in anything, because the contributions, individuals' contributions to their individual account was actually spent on other things. Okay, so individual account was meant to be fully funded, but it was borrowed against to pay for the transactional cost of the public pension reform of 1997. So individuals were thinking that they are contributing to the individual account, but the money was spent already by the government for other things. So that makes it a notional account. In 2013, the Chinese government officially gave up the fully funded individual accounts and started to follow a model of notional account. Interest is credited to the accounts each year by the local government, with the interest rate depending on the growth rate of the local average wage, bank deposit interest rates, and the investment rate of the pension fund. Prior to 2016, the notional interest rate was less than 4% in most of the provinces. In 2016, the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security published and mandated a unified interest rate, which is 8.31%. A great deal, right, for individuals, except that it's notional. Okay, that's fact number 6. What are the problems in this current pension scheme? One is financial sustainability, obviously, because of the rapid aging. The share of population over 65 years old in China will double between 2010 and 2030, and Chinese older age dependency ratio will be close to 40%, meaning that for every retiree, there will be only 2.5 workers working to pay for the system. Okay. The fiscal subsidy for the public pension system now stands at about 800 billion RMB a year, about 1% of GDP. And then, if the reform doesn't take place, the system would require much larger infusion of fiscal subsidies in order for it to be financially sustainable. I'm gonna skip this. Now, I already mentioned there is a big difference between the in-system old age dependency ratio and population-wide dependency ratio. The reason for that was there's wide-scale evasion of social insurance contribution in China. In 2015, only 70% of firms, 70% of firms paid less than the prescribed social insurance, right? So the firm will contribute to the social insurance, but they massage it in a way, manipulate the wage in a way that they pay less than what's needed, okay? The contribution rate in China is higher than in most countries, except that lots of employees are not willing to join the insurance scheme. The low-income group face unstable employment, and they worry that they contribute to the social insurance scheme. Will they be able to get it if they were to leave the firm that they currently working, and they don't know if they will be eligible to receive future benefits, right? So given that uncertainty, they will refuse to participate in the insurance scheme. Young people have high demand for current consumption, and high contribution rate reduce their consumption. So they also have some incentive to evade contributing to the social insurance system. And local governments are not very strict in punishing these evasions to the contribution of paying into the social security system. The second big problem is regional disparity. I already mentioned China's public pension system is managed by local governments. Several provinces are putting the funds at the provincial level, but most provinces are putting the funds at the city level or even county level. In other words, if you and I live in the same province but in different city, we may be facing very different social security pension benefits when we retire. Okay. The amount of contribution benefits have large disparities due to wage inequalities across regions. When additional problem for this, the fragmented system is that when workers move from one city to another to get a better job, they remain tied to the pension plan in their original city. This creates serious inequality issues as well as problems with labor mobility. If I had worked in City A for a long time, have contributed to City A's pension scheme, I may hesitate in moving to City B, even if there's a job opening in City B that suits me better. That's called the portability of the social security system might deter labor mobility, which is bad for economic efficiency, of course. Okay, so this figure is one that illustrates the regional disparity in the so-called support ratio. This is the ratio of contributors, right, to the social security divided by the number of retirees. Look at the higher the number, the better, right? So Guangdong province, the most the southern province to the north of Hong Kong, right? This support ratio is 9.28. In other words, for every retiree in Guangdong, there are close to 10 workers contributing to Social Security. So Guangdong, as you would imagine, has a pretty good social pension scheme financially. Look at the bottom of this chart, right? The provinces with the lowest support ratio: Heilongjiang, Jilin, and Liaoning, right? These are the 3 provinces in northeast China, right? These were 3 provinces that used to be the industrial, base of China when the People's Republic of China was first founded. But now it faces a lot of migration of its population. A lot of young workers from these 3 provinces, northeast China, they work in other provinces, right? In Guangdong, Guangdong's number here is high because Guangdong attracted large number of migrant workers from the rest of China, right? Fujian, Beijing, they all have reasonably good, kind of support ratios, but not the 3 provinces in northeast China, right? Any provinces or municipalities that have seen lots of out migration of young workers will see a big problem in their social security system. And the government is trying to, reform this, making it a uniform, a national kind of a system. But you can imagine there will be a lot of negotiations required for Guangdong and Fujian, these provinces that benefited from these young migrants from other provinces to agree to participate in the national system. But I think it will have to take place. Okay. Finally, another problem is just, even though we are talking about large coverage rates of the pension system, right? Close to 70% of the Chinese population are eligible to one form of pension benefits or another, right? Either the employee pension system or the resident pension system, but the pension adequacy is quite suspect, right? So compared to the pension level, the basic pension is about 10 to 25% of consumption per capita, varying from regions. Compared to the income level, it's even lower. It's about 7 to 20% of household income per capita. Okay, and right. So the government. Yeah, so government is trying to, now I will just spend a few minutes, I'm running out of time almost. I'm spending a few minutes to talk about some ideas for future reforms. One is to basically, infuse money into the system, okay? There are two basic ideas. One is to, basically mandating that 10% of the profits of state-owned enterprises will be paid into the pension system, right? So basically, use the state-owned enterprise profits as a form of as a source of revenue infusion into the system. The second is that the Chinese government established something called National Social Security Fund as a strategic reserve fund to cope with the future pension needs, right? So the dividend from state-owned enterprises will go into this NSSF. Any surpluses from the system will be invested into invested and try to get higher returns from this investment. This I will skip this. Actually, this national NSSF has quite a large assets in its portfolio, right? In 2012, this was the number that I had in the paper that I wrote for Handbook of Chinese Financial System. It has actually 893 billion RMB assets under management. In 2012, it got a return of 7.01%. Now, the second thing is improving productivity, of course, right? So, if one way to make the pension system more financially sustainable is to improve productivity so that workers' wage will rise faster. And so the contribution rate of 28% multiplied by higher wages would result in a better revenue income, right? To sustain the pension system. Now, the problem is that a population aging itself will have implications about the prospects or the opportunities to raise productivity. Now, this picture shows a relationship between population aging and entrepreneurship, right, across different countries. So these were a figure from Eddie Lazier's paper with his co-authors published in JPE Demographics and Entrepreneurship in 2018. The picture shows three plots, country level plots, dividing the countries into young countries whose median age is less than 37, older countries whose median age of the population is above 41, and middle countries, right? You can see that young countries tend to have higher entrepreneurship rate, right? Entrepreneurship rate is the fraction of the individuals in the population of a given age who actually start its own business. Okay, young individuals are more willing to take risks. They are more willing to start a business, right? So older population will reduce the entrepreneurship rate. This is the figure from the U.S. In a given country like the U.S., you can see that the age at which individuals are most likely to start their own business are basically 30s. 30 is in the late 20s and early 30s. Okay. In terms of that's entrepreneurship so far, right? In terms of patenting, this is a figure coming from a paper written by James Ferrer, right? Looking at over time, right? The age distribution of inventors among those who have been granted patents. You can see that inventors, the peak age is actually over 40, right? But you can see that older, if the population becomes very old, it also becomes less likely to create patents. Right? Both would be a implication of the population aging. Okay. Now something that I will briefly mention that, well, life expectancy is rising in China. I mentioned that already, right? In China, the life expectancy is now about 76.6 years at birth. Luckily, most of the rise in the life expectancy is actually rising healthy life expectancy, right? So you may, this, which means that there is a lot of potential for older workers to work longer, right? Because they're healthy, they live longer, but most of the increase in the life expectancy is increasing healthy life expectancy. So in principle, they could be, the older workers can work longer, okay? So indeed, raising retirement age it has been a proposal that has been mentioned all the time. One problem that, and I think eventually it will have to happen. One problem, however, is that older workers may be willing to work, but you need the firms to be able to be willing to hire them. One problem that in China that happened was, in China there is a very serious kind of seniority system, right? In other words, older workers actually are expected to be paid more than their junior counterparts. That creates a problem for the firm side. The firms may be saying, well, you are now 60 or more than 60, you are still healthy and productive. I'm willing to hire you if you are willing to get be paid a wage that is not higher than the young workers. Okay, but older workers actually expect to be paid higher than the young workers because of the long tradition of seniority in China. As a result, raising retirement age, or if the government want to raise the retirement age, you will have to, the firms must be willing to hire those older workers, and that takes, I think, quite a bit of policy interventions for, first of all, to essentially de-link or weaken the link between age and wages. Older workers should be more flexible in the wage they get paid by their employers. And second, the firms must actually redesign jobs and workplaces to accommodate older workers. Older workers and young workers may be willing to work in a different hours, right? The workplace need to be more friendly to older workers and so on. And that is just, I think, being discussed in China. And in fact, job redesign and workplace redesign to accommodate older workers must be an important policy response to if we are thinking about raising the retirement age. Okay. Last thing I will say is, there are other opportunities and challenges as the population age. Older people and young people tend to be different in their risk attitudes. The older individuals tend to be more risk averse than young, and that will have implications on financial risk taking in terms of whether whether the bond between bonds versus equity, and so on, right? older individuals are less sensitive to interest rates. Why? Because older individuals are not borrowing as much, right? We have paid out they have paid off their mortgages. They don't have an auto loan anymore. While young workers are still borrowing, they are very sensitive to interest rates. So that means the monetary policy, the typical tools of monetary policy instruments, which is the interest rate, is going to be less effective in an older society. The consumption bundles differ between older and young workers. Right? Young workers spend a lot on education, on travel, on entertainment, on housing. Older workers, they spend more on healthcare, on nursing homes, and so on. And it will have huge impacts on the industry, right? So typically demographics really will have a strong impact. Demographic changes will have a strong impact on the industry. And finally, the retirement income needs and long-term care would require innovative financial product redesigns. I'm running out of time because I really want to give at least 15 minutes for Q&A, but I do have a few slides actually prepared for this last item, which is innovative financial products, but I will skip that. I meant to say something about reverse mortgage products in China, because in China, the housing wealth accounts for close to 80% of the household wealth, much higher than the ratio, the fraction of housing wealth, fraction of wealth in housing in the United States. And being able to developing financial products that will allow individuals to tap into their housing wealth to pay for their retirement income needs and long-term care needs will be very important. And so far, the reverse mortgage products are not very major players in the US, and it is basically very difficult to introduce in China. And one large pilot in China in actually 6 major cities in China only attracted 138 participants. So it's really requires redesign of the traditional reverse mortgage products in order for the reverse mortgage products to play an important role here. And my own study tried to tackle that question. How can one redesign the reverse mortgage products to appeal to the Chinese market? Okay, but I will stop here.
Great.
And take
Thank
questions.
you very much, Hanming. Yes, in the interest of time, I think I'm going to go
I will
straight
stop
to
sharing. So
I'm going to go straight to some of the participants' question, and some of them is actually relevant to the last point that you were making. But let me go to the first one. The first question is from William Xiao, who is also a co-organizer of this seminar series. He wants to thank you for a very clear picture of the very complex pension system in China. And you pointed out several problems, including disparities of the pension benefits, underfunding, inadequate replacement ratio of them. He has 2 specific questions. The first question is that with such low replacement rate, how is it affecting individuals' saving and consumption behavior? You alluded a little bit to that, but I think he was also interested in how that also affects the macroeconomic development, if you would think about it, as China is actually trying to encourage people to spend more.
Right.
And meanwhile, this low replacement rate probably is going to motivate people to say, I need to save myself because I can't count on it. So that's his first question. The second question is the huge disparities that you show us. In a way, the Chinese pension system mirror very much to the social health insurance system. In terms of an urban scheme, a resident scheme, and huge disparity. And so his question is, what might be some of the approaches in a step-by-step way to solve this disparity problem? Now, you mentioned that China is trying to unify, same as in health. China said they want to unify. What do you anticipate that China will be doing to solve this problem? So these 2 questions first.
So thank you, William, for a great question. For your first question, how does the low kind of replacement ratio affect people's behavior on saving and consumption, and what's the macro implications? So first of all, for the current retirees in China, their I've indeed their pension replacement income is low. However, this generation of retirees benefited from China's rapid growth of the housing sector. So in other words, China started its housing reform in 1993 and introduced the commercial mortgage in 1998, and then after that, basically housing market took off, right? And this generation of retirees are essentially the lucky, IPO kind of holders of the Chinese housing market, right? They basically got to purchase housing at very low price, and many of them got their housing converted from their initially state provided housing, right, at a nominal price, and now this housing is worth a lot. Okay, at least for urban residents. So for the urban residents, their retirement will be fine in the sense that pension is not the only source of income. A lot of their wealth comes from their housing wealth, which have seen huge appreciation. In rural area, of course, that's not the case, and except indeed, I would say if China China wanted to convert to a consumption-based growth model, the biggest disparity that it will have to address is the rural-urban disparity, right? Because most of the Chinese population still in the rural area, they did not experience as much of income and wealth growth as the urban area. And if you want them to spend, you have to give them, essentially either have more transfers to the rural area or making a component of their assets appreciating value. And for rural residents, the biggest asset was the land, but land market, it has not been reformed. And I think that people have been proposing to make rural land more transferable, and being the assets of the rural resident, which is the land, when you have a land market that can go appreciating value, it will allow the rural residents to consume more as well. So that's part of the answer to your first question. Macroeconomic policy implications is huge, right? So China has a large savings rate, very high savings rate, in the excess of 45%. And that, there are a lot of explanations, but I think one of the major explanations indeed is that, the Chinese households feel like they need to save in order to prepare for their retirement, because of the inadequate replacement ratio of the social security system, health insurance system, and so on, right? So the anticipated future risk at the retirement is providing strong incentives for the household to save rather than consume. And that will, of course, be a problem for the government to switch to a consumption-based growth model. For your second question, what might be the step-by-step to solve the serious disparity problem? It's not going to be easy. I think there is a historical reason for the system to be very fragmented. When Chinese government wanted to introduce the pension system, it needs to get all the provinces on board, and the provinces in 1990s were very diverse in their per capita income. So the government kind of compromised by saying, look, you guys, each province, you have your own system. So the rich provinces are more willing to join the pension system, knowing that they can have their own kind of most of their social security contribution revenues within their province. And but now I think the government is attempting to unify the system. Details are not clear yet. I would say eventually the state-owned enterprise, dividends, infusions to the National Social Security Fund would have to play an important role. But some opponents would argue that the financial stability problem of the pension system in China is not just the fragmented, is not due only to the fragmented nature of the system. Even if the whole system is unified nationally, the system still faces fiscal sustainability problem because of just the demographics, demographic changes. So, but to address the regional disparity, I think unify the system at the national level will be a step, but I don't think it's going to solve the whole problem.
Great, thank you. I want to pick up on your point about old people investing in housing. It's almost like as a way of savings as well. That's part of their other assets portfolio. But with the recent developments or crises that we're seeing in the housing market, and it's revealing that there has been a bubble that people are just avoiding. How do you see that threaten this whole alternative of housing as a saving?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it really depends on when you get into the housing market, right? For the current retirees, they are essentially the generation of, who were the first group of people who bought the Chinese housing. Even with the downturns in the housing market, I think they are still coming out really well. Okay. The problem in terms of using housing as a source of wealth really will come up for the next generation, not even for my generation. I was born in the 1970s. For the people born in the 80s and 90s who bought housing at a much higher price, and they had to buy housing because they need to get married and raise a family and so on. They bought at a time when the housing was hot, and then when they retire, they may run into a prospect of housing market being a lot cooler. Hopefully, it will not collapse but you just cool down. Their housing as a source of their wealth become problematic. So I would say the generations born in the 80s and 90s, I think they should diversify. Housing is no longer the kind of investment instrument that will make you wealthy, right? I think that for my generation, 70s generation and 60s generation, if you have bought housing in China, you do well, right? It doesn't matter if the housing price were to drop by 10%, 12%. I don't think it will be a problem for the early generation. It's the 80s and 90s generation and the 2000 generation. They really need to think about alternative investments.
So let me just ask you one final question before we have to close. Unfortunately, the recent 14th five-year plan, actually aging and pension system, everything, a lot of social programs surrounding aging is really, really a top priority, taking up lots of there are a lot of new announcements in the area of pension system. So for example, you have already announced that China has raised its retirement age. What do you think, if you were going to advise the government, what do you think will be the number one policy that you think would help alleviate the financial sustainability problem?
Right. So I think there's some low-hanging fruit. First low-hanging fruit is actually make the system cover more people, particularly the migrant workers. I did not have time to go through one table where I present simulation results about the fiscal conditions of the pension system, depending on the fraction of migrant workers will be incorporated into the pension system, meaning that they contribute to the system and later on become eligible to receive benefits, right? So there are a large fraction of, actually only 20% of the migrant workers are in the system now, and there's still large room to go. And just by, say, raising the coverage rate of the migrant workers from 20 to 60% could actually go a long way in improving the fiscal conditions of the pension system. Secondly, I think raising retirement age is really something that is, economically sensible, and even it's because wasting of human capital, like individuals who are young and healthy and still productive, and letting them retire is really a large waste of resource. And I think that right now the problem of raising retirement age is that the system is designed in a way that make it feel will disincentivize people to actually retire later. So there are ideas about incentivizing individuals to retire later. In other words, they work longer, but adjusting their retirement benefits once they retire at an older age in a way to make them feel beneficial. And so that's one thing. There is redesign of the benefit schedule as a function of your retirement age that can incentivize more people to retire later. But that's still assuming that firms are willing to hire older workers, and that I think is a fundamental issue that has to be addressed. When I raise the issue, the very obvious idea of raising the retirement age, the readers of a newspaper commented that, but who's going to hire them? The older workers felt very difficult. They felt it's very difficult for workers older than 45 in China to find employment. Firms are just hesitating in hiring older workers. And in China, age discrimination is actually very prevalent. So I would say reforming the laws, breaking the norms of wage seniority, and making the workplace more friendly to older workers, making the job design more acceptable to older workers will be directions that one can do at the micro level, and eventually the government may, can raise the retirement age without just, pushing the older workers to retire later and not being able to find jobs.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm sure if we stay on for another hour, 2 hours, there will be many more questions. And because of your deep insight of the Chinese system, not just pension, but its broader labor market as well. So I hope that in the near future, we would be able to have another opportunity to interact with you to talk about the broader implication on the economy and other parts as a result of aging. Today, we just focus on pension as one of them. So on behalf of the Fairbanks Center, I thank you for sharing with us your knowledge, your wisdom, and we look forward to talking to you again and to continue to learn from you. Thank you. And thank you for all the participants.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
There are a couple more questions, but
yes,
let me see.
If you can, I will copy them actually.
Do you want to? Yeah.